What's up folks, how's it going? This is Watch. Hope you guys are all doing well, and today we're going to be talking about mechanical keyboards, specifically Varmilo mechanical keyboards. Now, if you don't know who Varmilo are, they're basically a custom manufacturer for mechanical keyboards that allows you to fully spec out the type of switches, the housing, the casing, the keycaps themselves, all sorts of different color combos, basically make your specific keyboard that you've always wanted. Now, what they've recently introduced is a whole new type of mechanical keyboard switches. Now, Cherry MX is pretty much the industry leader, has been for many years in the mechanical keyboard space, but Varmilo has introduced a whole new type of electrostatic switch called their V2 lineup of mechanical switches that potentially could give you a couple of different advantages that even Cherry MX doesn't offer at this point. Firstly, the way a traditional mechanical switch actuates a keyboard stroke is that there's two physical metal contact points that need to meet, make physical contact to initiate a keyboard command. Now, even given the durability and lifespan of most Cherry MX switches that are sometimes rated for tens of millions of keystrokes, there are still a number of failure points associated with having a mechanical switch dependent on a physical contact point. Variables involving friction, metal wear, dust and debris getting inside the switch itself, and general wear and tear could certainly degrade the performance of the switch over time given the product's life cycle. Now, the trigger principle on the Varmilo V2 switches are completely different. Instead of being reliant on physical contact points, the switch actually calculates and monitors the electrostatic resistance or capacity of two metal points located inside the switch itself. And when it reaches a certain threshold of electrostatic capacity, it's going to initiate a keystroke. Essentially, you don't have any physical contact points in this system. Thus, you don't have any of the physical contact failure points associated with many traditional Cherry MX style switches. So theoretically, Varmilo states that the lifespan of these switches is potentially unlimited. Furthermore, since you can change the electrostatic capacity of each individual switch, you can have a whole different array of switch types that we'll talk about in a little bit, and each switch is going to be very stable, fast in terms of actuating a keystroke, no N key rollover issues like older mechanical keyboards suffered in the past, and be extremely sensitive and appropriate to pretty much every user style out there. Now, funny enough, these electrostatic capacitive switches are actually not a brand new thing. They were actually used in keyboards in the past, mostly traditional silicone or rubber dome style switches. Now, currently there are 4 flavors of the V2 switches. Essentially, you have 3 linear style switches and 1 tactile. Now, starting with the lightest linear switch, which is the yellow daisy color, it only takes about 35 grams of force to actuate the switch itself, so it's great for anybody that types lightly or wants to eliminate any kind of fatigues that are associated with more traditional mechanical keyboards that are sometimes hard to press in. Now, next, the Shakura switch is very similar to Cherry MX Red in terms of overall feel. It's weighted at around 45 grams for force actuation, and it pretty much feels exactly the same as a Cherry MX, but less kind of clicky and a little bit more smoother based on my experience. This is actually the switch that's inside the keyboard that we have over here. After that, you have the Rose switch, which is weighted around 55 grams, so heavier than the Shakura, and certainly heavier than a standard Cherry MX Red, but a little bit lighter than a Cherry MX Black based on the notes that I have right now. Lastly, you have the Ivy clicky or tactile switch, very similar to a Cherry MX Blue, and this will give you that same kind of clicky sensation that you find on more traditional older style classic mechanical keyboards. And for me personally, I would love to try out a full keyboard layout with these switches, because for me a tactile or clicky style switch is my personal preference. Now, the performance on this Varmilo keyboard is actually really nice with the Shakura switches. They are very smooth switches. They are not that loud, but certainly give you a nice tactile sensation. Over time, I'm not sure how the durability will fare up with the electrostatic capacity trigger points that are inside over here. Supposedly, as we mentioned before, they could theoretically give you a longer lifespan than Cherry MX, but I'm not too sure about that, and it's going to be hard for me to test that. But initially, very stable switch. The spring on them is a nice resistance. They feel quite well made, and the overall feedback, tactical sensation they get out of these switches is very similar to some of the best mechanical keyboard switches that you're going to find out there. So certainly no complaints based on my experience thus far. Now, as far as the keyboard as a whole, we're using the pre-configured Moonlight wired mechanical chassis. But the cool thing about Varmilo is that you can change pretty much everything about the keyboard. You can customize the positioning point in the middle of the keycaps and the case itself. You can change the color of the top case, bottom case, keycaps, and of course you can configure the type of switches you want. They have pretty much all the main Cherry MX switches, and now their V2 electrostatic capacity switches are available as well if you want to try those out. Other than that, guys, that's really it. Definitely check out the description for more details. We'll do a follow-up video on seeing how this thing kind of fares up over time, and if you're interested in that, please give us a thumbs up. Make sure you have post notifications turned on so you get our videos once they become available. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you real soon. Take care.